guys. I know you must be wondering why I'm so excited to gather you all here today. I went to my first Shudder premiere. Okay, this is huge. You would have thought that Satan's favorite daughter, the Antichrist herself, would have been invited previously, but actually I was. I was invited to the Rule of Jenny Penn premiere, but I couldn't make it. The horror gods forgave, and I was invited to the Dangerous Animals premiere. So in this review, I will be sharing some premiere stories, getting into my spoiler-free thoughts, and then getting into a little spoiler section. If that all sounds good to you, then of course you may kick back, but you're not allowed to kick back if you haven't clicked subscribe yet. Sorry, kind of a weird rule, kind of a weird thing, but I will use the compulsion of Satan to not let you relax until you click that button. Also click the like button and the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. I talk about all things horror on this channel, a lot of reviews, rankings, a lot of random crap, so stick around. Now, if you thought that I went to the premiere of this film and I didn't embarrass myself at all, you'd be sorely mistaken. Wow. Many of you do follow me on Letterboxd, so I know you must be curious about the Mick Garris of it all. I spotted that long blonde hair and I said, yep, there's a legend, there he is. So I was telling my boyfriend, like, that's the guy that wrote Hocus Pocus, like, he directed Sleepwalkers. He was like, great, so say hi. And I said, are you fucking nuts? The irony of me cosplaying as the Antichrist online, but having pretty severe social anxiety when it comes to introducing myself to strangers is not lost on me, but nonetheless, that is the reality that I live in. So I was like, what are you, out of your mind? I'm not gonna be weird. And then he just took it upon himself to go up to him and say, excuse me, my girlfriend over here, she's a really big fan. I wanted to die. I wanted to pass on. I literally had to like cover my face for a second to just be like, had a nice little chat with him. I'll share the full story of that over on the Patreon, but ultimately he told me not to be embarrassed because people enjoy when they're approached and told that, you know, someone's a fan. So appreciated. I am, however, still embarrassed. I also met this cool guy, Nick, that I follow on TikTok. When I approached him, it was a little less scary because I had had 2 cocktails. And I was like, are you? And he was like, you're possessed by your... I was like, hot, but no. That's not literally what I said, but, you know, if I'm being mistaken for possessed by horror Sarah Hawkinson, I'm flattered. Anyway, turns out he followed me too. That was neat. Got interviewed by Watch Real Flicks as well, so I wonder if that video footage will ever make its way onto the internet. Was very, very cool. There was a little red carpet in the beginning. There were like free concessions and stuff. And then Sean Byrne introduced the movie. Watched the movie, great. There was like a 20-minute panel, so I do have a bunch of fun facts about the movie to share with you guys today. And then afterwards was the little cocktail party. There were people walking around with hors d'oeuvres. There were some photographers going around and like taking pictures of the event. So I don't know where those end up, but somewhere on somebody's SD card, there's a picture of me like double fisting my little cocktail drink. Like I just would always be caught because like the flash would start to go off and I'm like, oh, if I ever get invited back to one of these things, I gotta practice being chill. The only thing about the event that really put me off was the lead actress's bodyguard, because he and the actress like walked past me, and as they did, he like felt up like my back, and I was like, I was so put off by that, and like, I talked about it with my boyfriend. I'm like, yes, okay, this is the one instance where a man being randomly kind of handsy, I guess is fine, because nobody was like checking purses at the door, so I get it. Hey, still not appreciated. And then afterwards, I was like Googling her and stuff, and I came upon some article about her being the heiress of a billionaire, like her great grandfather or something was some billionaire. So I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense. I don't even know if that's true, okay? I gotta do a little bit more research, but overall, really, really fantastic event. Thank you to Shudder, IFC Midnight, Dangerous Animals. Shout out, you know how to put on a show. I loved it. It was my first time at the Egyptian Theater as well. You guys just know what you're doing, so bravo. It also helps when the movie is good. Ugh, I loved it. I am now gonna get into all my spoiler-free thoughts. Once again, I know that I kind of brushed over a lot of the stories from the premiere, but I do give my like career updates and more of the behind-the-scenes stuff over on the Patreon. So that will be coming out this week. Keep an eye out for that. Yeah, I loved the movie. Oh my god. It's like the first actually original shark movie since Jaws. There are other shark movies that I love. Okay, I know that it's corny. I like The Shallows. I used to love 47 Meters Down, but then when my frontal lobe was more developed, I rewatched it and realized that it it wasn't good. I love The Meg. I even loved The Meg 2, because those movies know what they're doing. Unbelievable to me that in the 21st century we get these like $200 million giant super dumb shark movies. I live for it. I think The Reef is pretty good. I haven't seen that in a while, but you know, I'm a shark movie girl. The really good ones are very, very few and far between, but all those movies that I just mentioned, they still are obviously gonna have traces of Jaws. Even the terrible shark movies that, you know, that they release like a couple to Tubi every year. We actually got one on Netflix a couple years ago, right? The one in Paris. They all have the shark attack element in common, kind of demonizing the sharks going after the humans, kind of like for no reason. This is, I swear to God, the first like original shark movie to come out since Jaws. I know that seems like a big thing, but it's true, babes. It's for real. The shark stuff is great. Now, mind you, just because this movie is not like outright kind of demonizing sharks, there's still violence, which actually when I got interviewed by Watch Real Flicks, that's what I said that I was like most excited for. Here come these two, you know, cool guys. They just want to ask me a couple fun questions. We're at a premiere and he's like, what are you most excited for? And I literally, I can't remember what I said now, but it was something like, you know, I'm really hoping to see some violence a little bit. I bet he was thinking, oh, I got what I wanted though. What can I say? And a lot of the times the violence is not shark related. And there were a couple moments that had me gagged to the point where I actually had to cover my eyes. So also, you know, props of course to the sound design. I don't say that to say that things are implicit, because there's a lot of gore right on screen, right there for your viewing pleasure, baby. But I think there was at least one moment where not only was I closing my eyes, but I also was like plugging my ears. I just was that grossed out. Along with that, I do want to start getting into some of the fun facts about the movie. This one had me floored, and I think it was like one of the most interesting tidbits they shared. There was a real shark attack while they were shooting, because they were on location out in the ocean. This movie originally was going to take place in Santa Cruz, but once Sean Byrne was attached to direct, he was fighting for the Gold Coasts of Australia. I think absolutely to the movie's benefit, this movie is gorgeous, and the contrast of all the natural beauty to the violence was just like, mwah. Anyway, so there was an incident with a bull shark. I forget who exactly they said it was. I believe that it was one of their stunt coordinators. He was just hanging out in the water because they're on location. They're having to shoot stuff underwater, you know, on the boat. He's just hanging out, and when all of a sudden he is tugged violently under the water. A bull shark had apparently taken a chunk out of his flipper. He never even saw it. That was how fast and hard it bit his flipper. Imagine. Do you know how many inches there must have been between that chunk and the dude's actual foot? Dude could have lost some toes so easily, and then things probably would have gotten a lot worse. Now, according to the rest of the cast and crew on stage, they were saying that they didn't know that it happened right away. They said that it was day 3 of their shoot when at one point the mood of all the stunt coordinators and the first AD, all of a sudden it got really serious and the mood seemed to lower. And so the cast was like, this is weird. It feels like, you know, something bad is going on or something. I don't know when they found out, but it wasn't until later that they were informed that there was an actual like shark bite. From that point onward, that day, they said no more cast is getting into the ocean. And then beyond that point, maybe the next day or whatever it was, they ended up putting essentially like a giant cage around their filming location, around the boat, because the actors get in the water quite a few times. Also, I believe majority of the footage of the sharks is real. They were consulting with, I guess, like a shark specialist, if you will, that provided the footage, and they storyboarded things and said like, you know, these are the kind of movements that we're looking for. So maybe it's not perfect. If you ever find yourself questioning like, why in this moment is the shark moving like that? I didn't really sense much of a disconnect, but if you find yourself wondering, it's real footage of real sharks, which I just think is so cool and was a great choice. Being that they were out on location as well, Hassie mentioned while she was reading the script, like, ooh, this is gonna be a couple of night shoots out on the ocean. Okay. You know, they had to kind of mentally steel themselves for that kind of work, but she seemed so down. She seems very like laid back and just very game. The whole cast did. Josh Houston, I'm gonna double check that's his name. Yeah, Josh Houston and then Jai Courtney were also there, which I haven't even mentioned him yet. He was fantastic. I think the obvious standout of the film. A lot of people on Letterboxd are saying that Hassie is going to be like this new breakout star. I can see where they're coming from because this was not an easy role. I think that she definitely rose to the occasion. I don't think that she like rose above it. Look, I'm a little hard to please, okay? There's like 100 years of badass final girls in horror history, and I know almost every single one of them. I can definitely sympathize that this was not an easy movie to shoot. I mean, she's doing some clearly very real life badass things. Great performance. I don't think it's anything that crazy to write home about. I am, however, now more obsessed with Jai Courtney. He was so phenomenal. They also spoke on the panel about the marriage of the comedy with the horror, and I felt like that was carried by Jai Courtney. Also, he was very lively. He kind of seemed to like take the reins of the panel quite a few times, and he just seemed like he was having a ball talking about his work up there, and I could very easily see him having that sort of attitude on set as well. I think he was having so much fun in this role, and it's a really, really delicate balance to walk. The screenwriter said that originally there was a lot more comedy in the script, and then that changed when it, became the movie. I can kind of see that, but the movie felt pretty self-aware as it was. Like, it struck a very nice, very delicate balance. I think, like I said, in large part to Jai Courtney. So I think that those changes were definitely made for the better. And also Jai was saying, to his credit, I think very humbly, was saying that it's work to kind of strike that delicate balance. He felt like he was being guided by Sean Byrne, that it was a really collaborative effort. And then Hassie was also saying, like, it's just so fun when you take a big swing and your co-star just kind of like, throws it right back at you with, kind of like an equal energy. They also mentioned that they always wanted Jai Courtney, but his casting was actually very last minute. I'd be so curious to know more so how that works, because I started my first film that is actually coming out this week on Friday the 13th. Shout out Morgan Killer Doll. You'll be able to rent it on Google Play and also Apple TV, and it's coming out, I think, in like 5 cities and theaters. But I know that my casting was pretty last minute. Even so, I was in communication with the director, and though I wasn't even like signed on or anything, I just had kind of like a blind faith. I was manifesting. And so I was working with him on the character for like a week up to being cast. I think they mentioned they only had like 3 days between casting him and when shooting began. I'm really, really fascinated by that whole process and casting and stuff, and how actors adapt when they have such little time to do something, especially of this caliber. Jai Courtney, I was unfamiliar with your game. I knew him as Eric in the Divergent movies, and if you told me that he was Australian back then, I don't know if I would have believed you. He's one of the best parts about those movies, by the way. God, those movies stink. And then I remember seeing him in Suicide Squad. That was all that I was familiar with. I knew that he could play an asshole because of Divergent, but then for him to I don't want to say that like he led this film, because Hassie led the film and she did a hell of a job. But for him to carry this much of the load of a film and for, to be the obvious standout to me, just was unaware, okay? Just didn't know. Now that I am aware, I actually need to see him in at least 2 theatrical releases every single year. Studios, write that down. Please and thank you. My last positive for the film, and then I do have a couple of nitpicks. I think on paper, this movie could be read as extremely repetitive, because the premise, while it's something new, it is still relatively very simple, and the movie is kind of majority one location. I thought they kept it really fresh, and it didn't feel repetitive for whatever that's worth. This does kind of lean on survival horror a little bit. I feel like overall, that's kind of the subgenre you would put it in, besides sharks, obviously. Despite the characters ending up in very similar situations kind of over and over, I felt like they were tackled from different perspectives and different angles every time. Oh, and how could I forget? The soundtrack is phenomenal. When I went to the premiere a couple of weeks ago, I posted some pictures on Instagram, and if you go back and look now, then you might have pieced it together that the songs I used are actually from the soundtrack of this movie. Just little Easter eggs for you. Now, I did end up giving this movie 4 stars out of 5, so obviously I've got just some little issues here and there. I don't like the tacky romance subplot. Oh, it's not good. Now, this movie is funny, so naturally there is some self-awareness with it. Unfortunately, it just was not enough to override the overwhelmingly tropey feelings of it. And I mean overwhelming, okay? Loner girl meets a romantic boy. She quotes movies. Isn't she cool? He's only spent 1 day with her, but he feels like he really knows her. Please, the only man who has written a successful storyline like that is Richard goddamn Linklater. Before trilogy, learn about it. I got the ick. I got icked out. I don't like that at all. I don't like that. I don't like it at all. You have these people that have known each other for one day and she's like, you don't, come on, you don't know me. And he's like, but I do know you. No, you don't piss me off. Anyway, so I really just was really put off by the kind of romance subplot. And that's not a spoiler. Don't worry. Their relationship is set up like very early on in the movie. Now, the rest of the tropes in the movie, some of like the serial killer tropes, didn't mind them because I felt like they tackled it in a very original way. Tropes can be tools, you know? And for the most part in this movie, they worked well. Also, there was one fairly large contrivance in the plot, and like I can mostly excuse it because I'm not one to like nitpick on that usually. But it was a pretty big one. Like, it was one that kind of had me scratching my head a little bit. So overall, not the tightest, cleanest plot, not the most well-written subplots, okay? Lean really heavily on tropes, but overall, just a rip-roaring good time. Oh, I recommend. It just released this past weekend, so hopefully you can still find it in theaters this week. Get out and see it in theaters. I think for me, it absolutely helped to see it on the big screen. Also with the sound design and everything, hearing the big musical stings, some of the jump scares really worked for me, just especially within that context. And also, like, obviously at the premiere, people are laughing at all the jokes in the movie, and the audience was very lively, so I can only hope and dream for you that you can find a screening that's somewhat similar. But even if not, this is a spectacle shark film, and I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice to just simply wait for it to be on Shudder. So do your darndest to go see it, but if you can't, then that's alright, you can catch it on Shudder, and probably still have a blast at home. Please support this movie, okay? When original cinema wins, we all win. And shout out to Shudder and IFC Midnight for, you know, funding original work like this. Also, I try to always recommend this. You notice how I haven't even shared a synopsis? If you haven't heard about this movie and you can go in blind, please, for the love of God, do so. I would say avoid trailers. Try to avoid a synopsis, okay? You have a little bit of an idea, okay? There's sharks and great performances. Are you not sold yet? Just go. I am about to get into the spoiler section, so you will no longer be safe. I'll be waiting right here when you get back from the theater, so it's fine. There's no need for any FOMO, I understand, but I'll be right here, okay? I'm right here waiting for you. So don't spoil this movie for yourself, okay? It's time to get into a little plot breakdown. The opening slaps, okay? The opening slaps. The cold open, as we like to call them, slaps. I knew vaguely that this movie was about a serial killer that captured a girl on his boat. I really wasn't totally sure how sharks tied in. Like, I kind of had an idea, because not a lot of directions you can take that, but there were elements I still was surprised by, and the cold open was one of them. He has this couple on the boat, and they get to this really great experience going down into the cage. They're having a great time. They're singing Baby Shark, Jai Courtney, oh Captain, my Captain, you are so fucking funny. And then once they're out, like, truly my defenses were lowered. I didn't know how it was gonna go from that point on. I didn't think that this couple was going to be surviving this film, but it really took me aback when all of a sudden, dude is stabbed and pushed into the water. I knew on some level, I guess I just was thinking maybe he just sort of like pushed him into the water or something, but fantastic opening. My God, such a great title card drop as well. The theater went nuts, by the way. So I loved the opening of this movie, and that helped a lot, especially with the pacing of like meeting our protagonist couple, because that was kind of barf, but I already had been treated to some really nice violence right before then. So I was still excited. I was still on the edge of my seat. I was like, okay, all right, good stuff, movie. I'm excited for the rest that's to follow. Even when I was having to sit through what was admittedly a very well done, a very tastefully shot sex scene. Actually was a huge fan of that. But then I'm having to grit my teeth a little bit when she's like quoting Point Break at him, and he's like, did you really just quote Point Break at me? Now, this next part also felt self-aware because, mind you, the theater was cracking up, but he makes this wonderful breakfast, but then when he steps out and sees her gone, for whatever reason, the theater just started erupting in laughter. So I hope that was supposed to be a self-aware moment and not like a really earnest, oh, how crushing, his heart must be broken. Because he's just standing there with a giant stack of pancakes like in his underwear, just like, oh. I think maybe I found that funny because, to my knowledge, those kinds of men don't really exist. I mean, well, to be fair, my boyfriend will plan, like, surprise weekend trips for me, but cooking, not really his strong suit. Which, did I mention we looked so cute? He's such a hot date. It was so fun going to the premiere with him. Anyway, the chemistry was serviceable. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, ugh, God, not believable. They were fine. They were, you know, they did well together. I thought they had good chemistry. During the panel, they said that they felt felt like they had very immediate chemistry as well. Nonetheless, like I said, I just found them to be pretty much barf. And also, what do you mean that you only sustain yourself eating bread rolls? You can't do that. You can't do that. You will not have the washboard abs that Hassie Harrison does if you just eat bread rolls all day, okay? Nor would you probably have such great skin, nor would you have all of your hair because you're not getting any nutrients. I digress. The things that, I'm sorry, but there's the things that male screenwriters will do to like write little funny little quirks for female characters. They sometimes just make no sense. Did it give her some personality? Yeah, I guess, but did it also make me severely scratch my head? Also a yes. Now, anyway, boring. Past that, we get to the first shark attacks. I thought the actress who played Heather actually was really fantastic. She was really believable. I felt her sadness. I felt her pain. I felt her terror. She was great. Would love to see her again. Her scene, I think, was one of the most, not jarring, one of the most visceral though, certainly, because it was the introduction to what this serial killer does to his victims, or rather what he makes the sharks do to his victims. Because like I said, they very much made it a point not to demonize the sharks. Even in the movie, there is dialogue that kind of explains their instincts and stuff. So if you throw chum and they associate boats with food and everything, and you have an animal that is thrashing around, yeah, they're gonna make the mistake and they're gonna take a chunk. The way that was shot was gruesome. I was not surprised because this director previously had directed The Loved Ones, which I remember not liking at the time, but I really want to go back and watch it again because I just remember it being quite torturous, just a lot of violence and not a lot of plot and stuff, and at the time that really wasn't my cup of tea. It felt a lot more intentional in this movie. I felt like there was a better balance, and also how the psychology of our killer connected to the instincts of sharks and stuff. I found that to be very fascinating, and according to Jai Courtney as well, there was a lot that was left on the cutting floor apparently that kind of fleshed out his backstory. You do get some hints here and there about her saying like, you know, your mom didn't love you enough or whatever, and now you gotta kill women. But there was this one other shot that really confounded me where our killer was very lost in his thoughts and he was staring at this woman walking by who had dreads, and then he eventually kind of ended up just like snapping out of that and like kept driving. I'll tell you, in the moment that felt super random, so if they ever release a director's cut on physical media, I'll be all over that. If not a director's cut, just an extended cut, I don't care. Not that I think his lore needed to be explained or anything, but the way that Jai Courtney was speaking about it, it seems like he was pretty invested in that backstory. He felt it worth mentioning that some of those scenes were cut, so I'm like, well, now they feel like they're worth watching. And then I won't get into every single escape attempt. Like I said, on paper, they did seem repetitive, but I was pretty excited every single time. And being in the theater, that helps big time because you get more of a sense of like the feeling of the sound of this boat that's just too far away, but you can feel the vibrations of the music. So you can feel the vibrations, but you can't hear the music. It gives you a much better sense of just the distance between them, how close help is and yet so far. You know, so once again, big ups to the sound design there. It was mixed for the theater very well. When things switched up when Moses ended up on the boat, that was the one plot, wait, I might have called it a contrivance. I think it's more of a convenience. It's a plot convenience, not a contrivance, that he just so happened to like make the connection with the video footage of her van and then his truck passing. I don't know that I would have made that connection. I was watching that and I was like, am I dumb? Or like, is this pretty convenient? Because then right when he shows up, he hears her banging and it's like, it's all excused because then when they're laying together later, he's like, I know you. But I'm sorry, that is just not enough for me to buy into how convenient this was for him. It's fine. I'm watching a serial killer shark movie. I don't really care that much about it, but that was pushing my limit a little bit. When he gets on the boat, there are a couple of terrible things that are, you can see them coming, but it doesn't change how terrible they are. When Moses is first dropped into the water and he stays still because the sharks sense that he has a good vibe. No, I'm just kidding. That's actually what you should do in that kind of scenario. Don't thrash around because then they will mistake you for food. So just stay still, stay calm, and if they do get too close, bop them on the nose. Anyway, irrelevant. I knew the moment that he pulled him up out of the water, I was like, well, he's gonna stab him. Oh, the serial killer's just not gonna feed him to the sharks just because they were chill and just swam around him. No. So even though I knew exactly exactly what he was about to do. It was still horrendous. It was still like cringe inducing and like, oh God, oh no, oh, poor Moses. Anyway, not gonna dig too far into all the escape attempts and everything, but I do think that I mentioned earlier that Hassie Harrison passed out while filming one scene. It was the last scene that they shot on the last day of the shoot, so I imagine that she just is like facing exhaustion or something. I wish she got into detail here because it was the scene where her character bites off her thumb. Oh my God, that is one of the more badass things that I've ever seen a final girl do, and I've seen a lot in my day. That was nuts. Okay, it was already nuts that she broke her thumb, which I thought, you know, for all intents and purposes, that was a surefire way to get cuffs off. You're supposed to break your thumb and then, you know, it's supposed to just slide off. I thought maybe she just would like break it further or like push it further in or something. She bit it off and left it on the pillow like a little hotel mint. Nuts. Absolutely diabolical. She says that she was sitting there and while she was like doing it and whatever, she just started to like tip over and she passed out. She fainted. And I'm like, what? Why? She did say that she had bruises on her wrists for 3 months following the shoot because of the chains. I don't even, is that possible? Do we have an MD in the chat? Can you let us know? So I don't know if it was just from that, the repetitive bruising, the exhaustion. She did not clarify what exactly made her pass out about shooting that scene. I don't know if it was just like being in the headspace of the character and like mimicking doing it, because shit gets really real when you're acting. I don't know, but that's just nuts. Props to everybody. How about that? Good job. Claps. Thumbs up all around. No pun intended there. I do think that our serial killer's death could have been drawn out just a little more. It was still pretty yummy. And then the final fake out where she gets yoinked off the boat. I mean, come on. I didn't think that it was the strongest ending for what I felt was like a super strong movie. And then also, of course, they ended the movie on the super tacky dialogue that I just was not having for the entire runtime. So that also doesn't help. But Jai Courtney did say that if they found some way to bring him back or if he had an evil twin or something, that he would be open to returning, and I gotta say I am kind of hoping for that. Oh, how could I didn't even mention the VHS tapes. God, I thought that was so clever, the way that he tied his victim's hair to the fish hooks. I'm sounding like I'm glamorizing that a little bit. It was a good movie idea, good screenwriting idea, something that we've seen in the past, like Mark Duplass's Creep films with his tapes, but done in its own very unique way. Oh, and I forgot to mention in his line of dialogue where he says something like, oh, isn't that romantic? But I prefer horror movies. Ah, me too, King. Me too. Oh, and the dancing. God, there was a lot that I didn't mention. My bad. I guess I felt like I was complaining about the ending, so I was trying to like qualify it with a bunch of other stuff that I did love about the movie. I don't know how this would get a sequel. It's not like I really think it needs one, but any excuse to see Jai Courtney come back? Yeah. Or even a prequel? Give me a prequel. Yeah, give me a prequel. You can do it just like Creep, you know? I don't think that he needs a show. I don't think that this would work in a show format at all. And it would almost not work as a prequel either, but you know what? I'm still willing to see that. So that's gonna do it. I've rambled on and on about this movie. So I hope that you've enjoyed. If you want to get more of like the nitty-gritty details, like I said, about the premiere stories, then go check out the Patreon. If you want more reviews on this channel, then stay tuned. I also do other horror-related discussions. Before I go, I'll also let you know that I have another channel on YouTube. It's primarily where I talk about physical media, and I also vlog fun, spooky outings. So you can join me. It's my hobby channel. We have fun over there, though. The rest of my social media is also listed down below, as well as the GoFundMe for my next short horror film. So consider checking out that campaign and donating. It would mean a lot. But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye.